Welcome back. This is going to be part 2 of my I Married a Psychopath. We met in 1995. Both Marines. I was in a really bad situation by that time. My disability had brought me to deep depression. And because I really didn't have a good relationship with my parents because of the way I had grown up, living with them and trying to fight the VA and try and get benefits. Everything just seemed to be pushing in on me. And like I said, my depression was really bad and really deep. And I was doing a lot of things that I shouldn't have done. One was seeing some man. We were friends, sort of. We were more like casual sex acquaintances. And I had endometriosis and was diagnosed many years ago. I was 16, around there, when I found out that I had it. And I'll tell you, I was told I would never have children. So I had already had one miscarriage when I was in the Marine Corps, and it was a tubal, and they caught it in time before it ruptured the fallopian tube. This second time I'd had a baby, gotten pregnant, I was 10 weeks. The fetus erupted through the wall of the fallopian tube. I had emergency surgery. Everything was taken care of. My parents were the ones that took me to the hospital and were with me while I was there. And around this time, I had kind of known Doug through email, just kind of a friends thing. He cried with me on the phone over the loss of my baby. He made me feel like I was the most important person in the world. And he told me he loved me every single day. And it took me a long time to believe this. And that was July the 3rd when I lost my baby. And my relationship with the man who was the father of that baby just fizzled out. I mean, I lost the baby, that was it. And Doug sent me flowers. He called me. He sent me letters telling me about this great love he had for me. And I finally was kind of worn down. And he wasn't what I had pictured as my ideal man. But I loved him anyway because he said all the right things and did all the right things. And so he told me he was getting out of the Marine Corps, which I found out later that he'd already been out of the Marine Corps. And he says, I'll be there, out of the Marine Corps in September, and I'm going to move to New York because I want to find a job. I'm from New York. And I think, I'll figure this out. Well, turns out he was still married. He had 2 kids. Now, I did know about the children. And I did worry that going so far from them would be sad, like how you're going to visit your kids when you're, they're in South Carolina and you're here in New York. But I figured he knew what he was doing. He was older than I was. And so things kind of played out that way. Well, shortly after he moved to New York, his wife started calling. And she was honest with us. But he said, oh, no, she's lying. She's psychotic. She's a stalker. You should see the things that I had to go through in the Marine Corps. And he convinced me and my family that she was one flew over the cuckoo's nest. And so he then got a job, really good job, at West Point. And he infiltrated my life completely. And I felt loved and cherished and treated better than I'd ever been treated by another person. And for the first time, I believed that I was loved. And of course, I I loved him for loving me. And so we spent the next 4 years, 5 years, 4 years in New York together. We had a really just great relationship, except for the fact that every once in a while the ex would become part of our lives. She'd send an email, she'd talk to his boss, and it was a mess. She was not getting the support she needed from him. Now, at the time, it was none of my business. I had no idea what was going on, and it wasn't until after he tried to kill myself and my son in 2009 that I actually talked to Jeannie and found out all of the truths. And I did not find out that he was not divorced from her until we went to get our marriage license, and the divorce date was like, I don't know, a week or two before our wedding day. And I was like, what the hell? You were married all this time? He's like, oh, it's no big deal. We just never filed the paperwork with the courts. But I found that was wrong, that he'd definitely, he definitely knew. He was very, very manipulative. Couldn't think of the word. So, yeah. And she also told me she did not know that we had a son until the divorce. So that was a big surprise for her. And I felt really, really bad for her. So until, I'm going to say 1999, September 1999, everything was great. I lived in a world that was a huge bubble. In January of 1999, we moved from New York to Florida. We had rented a place from a friend of ours. And by February the 17th, I knew I was pregnant, and I was scared to death. I spent 9 months in fear. And that's when the bottom fell out of my world. In October, I found out that, yeah, he'd started cheating on me the same way he did to his ex-wife. And I was in shock, and I couldn't believe that he had done this, because I truly believed he loved me. And having a child, I truly, truly believe that because of both myself and Jeannie having children, that was, he couldn't split the love of a mother to a child with the love of a wife to a husband, or a girlfriend to boyfriend, or whatever you have. He thought I could only love Ian. I could not love him and Ian. And I think he resented the child. And that's really sad. So my next video, I'll continue on about what it was like after having Ian. Bye.